Gentlemen, Your Excellency, welcome again. This will be our final session of the day before we go into the closing session and the app challenge. Again, I would like to remind you the app challenge is worth staying for. It's a very exciting thing to see. His Excellency, the Prime Minister, will be with us, and within an hour we should begin. We will move on now to our final session, which is education for employment. The ICT sector has built on matching the supply of qualified and competent ICT talent with the needs and requirements of employers. Nevertheless, the outcome of the education system has been rather declining in quality, and despite many programs to encourage and improve the quality and employability of graduates, the gap between academia and the private ICT sector has been increasing. How can we guarantee a good supply of human resources in line with global technology advancement? To talk to us about this I would like to invite Bashir Salaita, Fayrouz Taqiyuddin, Baha Zayyat, and moderating this session would be Abid Shamlawi, the CEO of Intaj.
And I'd rather if the panel actually can come to the middle. We're going to talk about an interesting topic, and I've been actually into this topic for the past few years. Myself, as the CEO of Intaj, and as Abid as well, we've been trying to analyze how do we connect education and employment, and the concept of how do we make education better so we can create better employment opportunities. With me on the panel, I'm not supposed to be actually talking about the topic. They're supposed to be talking about the topic. I'm only moderating the session. With me on the panel, my colleague Baha Zayyat from the ICT Sector Skills Organization, a newly established organization under the ICT Association. Ms. Samia Melhem from the World Bank. Ahlan wa sahlan, you're welcomed in Jordan. And my colleague Dr. Bashir Salaita from the King Abdullah Fund for Development, and they've been doing an excellent job in that. And my colleague as well, Fayrouz Taqiyuddin from Celatec from Qatar. Welcome on the panel, and let me start by a question. Why do we feel that there is a problem? Why do you feel that there is an issue between education and employment? Would someone would like to take it? Maybe I will actually ask Fayrouz to shed some light on this.
Well, I think it's really, let me start with this quote that I once heard at this education summit, and unfortunately I don't know who to attribute it to, but I remember it really resonated with me. And it went as this. It said, students of today are learning the curriculum of yesterday, being taught by the teachers of the past, using the methodologies of the Middle Ages to solve the problems of tomorrow. So I really believe this quote sums the challenge and says it all. And the biggest problem with our current higher education system is we are not producing the human capital that acquires the skill set that the private sector needs, that the current economic platform in our region needs. So that's the biggest gap we face. So it's a really skill gap. That's what we're facing today.
Samia, what do you think? You as the World Bank, I'm sure you have been seeing a number of indicators, and you've been looking at it, and how, what's happening?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me start by thanking the organizers for inviting me. I'm very pleased to hear all what I've learned in the last 2 days. Thank you.
As Fayrouz said, the skill gap is due to inability of the education sector to reform and restructure itself. We all know how hard reform is. It's a total overhaul that we're talking about. And we're not talking only about university. We're talking about education starting at childhood level. Earlier on, there was a session on entrepreneurship, which talked about the skills and the culture needed for entrepreneur, empowerment, confidence. And this starts at home. This starts with the parents. This starts with good teachers. When you look at countries that have succeeded in a revolution in the education sector, and I'll take two examples. I'll take South Korea and I'll take Finland. South Korea in the 1960s had a GDP equal to that of sub-Saharan African countries. They have achieved a major overhaul of themselves by focusing on education, by not only having the Minister of Education work on this, but mobilizing all of government, partnering with the private sector, and understanding this is a decade-long exercise. So if we look particularly at ICT, education of ICT, and going back to where it starts, in primary education, teaching the kids on how to use technology, teaching them how to use it for the right causes, the ethical, moral use of technology, not just giving them a Ferrari and telling them to drive it without teaching them the rules of conduct, teaching the parents, teaching the teachers who are very often very insecure. And that's a monumental task. Most governments start teacher training exercise and stop short. They train 10,000 instead of training 100,000. The process of accreditation, of certification, of making the profession of a teacher professional, well paid, etc. And then, of course, when we go to higher education, and really restructuring two things in the higher education system, especially in the MENA region. First of all, the way it is administered, the whole ecosystem around administrating it, the way the tests are given, the way the courses are created, and the curriculum itself, while tying it to the private sector and the employers, very important. And then again, lifelong learning for adults like us, so that we keep current and professional. So I think it's a whole journey that we need to address, and it's scary, but it needs to be done. Thank you.
Fantastic. So we're connecting the dots. So it's really the education, the early education connected with the secondary education, going into university, and then into the employment side. How do you see, which one do we see? Do we see a bigger gap, for example, in academic education, or being, for example, higher education, or do we see a problem more into vocational side? Maybe Dr. Bashir would be able to contribute into this.
Thank you so much. Mainly, I think the problem of unemployment is a symptom of many chronic diseases that the region is suffering from. I think the most chronic disease is the vivid mismatch between the supply side and demand side. Supply side in terms of the demographic structure of the region. In some countries in the region, 3/4 of the population is under the age of 30. In Jordan, around 65% of the population is under the age of 30. And on the demand side, we believe that the economic structures of the region are not able to support the youth, basically, who enter the labor markets in large numbers. The region here is witnessing one of its largest youth cohorts in its history. And I think the part of we also need to build kind of strong competitive private sector that will be able to absorb the labor market entrance. For example, in Jordan, the number of university graduates last year was 44,000, while the economy was able to generate around 17,000 jobs for them alone, for those graduates. So it's only 1/3 will be able to find jobs. So that is the problem, which is a structural problem in the labor market in Jordan. But
Is that because of the 17,000 were the only qualified segment that was able to get jobs, or is that because there were only 17,000 jobs created in the first place? What is really, so what's happening?
Yeah, the problem is in the numbers mainly, as we noticed, and the quality remains an issue in the quality of our graduates, as the employers always complain from. So the thing is, what we need to do is to alleviate this problem. I know that the problems I mentioned takes long time to solve. So we need kind of short-term and mid-term solutions on the supply side of the labor market and on the demand side in terms of improving the business environment and promoting entrepreneurship in the region. On the supply side, I believe what we can be done is smoothing the transition or alleviating the problem of the mismatch through providing better career, let's say one of the interventions is providing better career guidance, or what's called more active labor market policies to help the youth enter the life of work.
Great, great. Maybe we can shift a little bit into the ICT sector itself, and I would like actually to give the space to my colleague Baha Zayat to give us an idea. Baha, despite the numbers, we still see maybe demand is high for employment in the ICT sector in a way or another, and maybe for a certain area. Could you give us your insight? Where do you see it? You're starting something new. It's an amazing idea. What is really your take on it?
Thank you, Abed. Thank you all for your participation and attendance. Actually, what you said is basically defining the problem. I mean, when we're talking about the gap between the supply and demand and the mismatch, we're talking about extra supply, and there's lots of unfulfilled job opportunities in the ICT sector in Jordan due to two things, basically. The first issue is that I believe that universities in Jordan are not doing enough job in directing students and in selecting the majors to begin with, to direct student to. So basically we have so many students graduating from certain majors at universities that are not really needed in the market. From the other side, this is an issue. The other issue is after they graduate, and even if their majors are needed, they are not capable enough to compete to those to those jobs. So basically we end up with so many unfulfilled jobs and so many or higher rate of unemployment. So as my colleagues said, in order to tackle this issue, we need to have a comprehensive solution that starts with schools, universities, and after schools, basically. And this is where our organization will be positioned, actually, with the phase that is after the universities. We will try to do our best, basically, to help in bridging the gap and helping in matching the supply and demand, but in ICT sector in particular. But I mean, this is not enough, actually. There is lots of efforts needed to be done from the educational institutions, from schools, even from families to direct their kids, and from early stages, some kind of career counseling from all sides in order to end up with better candidates that they can compete, and they are employable and they are needed in the market.
Great. So do we see the issue, Fayrouz, maybe you can tell us more about this. Do we see the issue that it's a skills gap, or it's really, or supply is unable to find demand? I mean,
I think it's both. I don't think it's either or question. In terms of the skill gap, I work for an organization, Silatek, which means your connection, the Arabic word for your connection. And it was established 5 years ago. It's a social regional initiative focused on working with the Arab youth, helping them enter the job market. And we really focus on those first time entry into the job market, so the young graduates, the 18 plus up to 30. And I think the biggest issue we found is that many of those graduates lack certain skill set. And I'm not talking about technical skill set. I'm talking about the soft skills. I'm talking about the non-cognitive skills. The soft skills like the leadership skills, the communication skills. Those are the, negotiation skills, conflict resolution, anger management. Those are the skill set that are transferable across sectors. And it's so interesting if, you read all these studies about, the future jobs out there. You're talking about big data, cloud computing, etc. What are they looking for? They're talking about those soft skills. They're not talking, technical is very important, but they said, okay, if you gather this big data and you're doing your analysis, we need someone who can communicate it. So if you lack that soft skill communication, then you're gonna fail. And studies have shown over and over, people who really succeed in their life, whether they're entrepreneurials or they're employees in big companies, are the one who really masters those soft skills. And I think this is where our education system lacks. We're not putting enough attention on soft skills. So Silatech believes in building on those soft skills. That's why we invest in programs such as, one of the programs we do is Ta'mal, which is an employability portal, the first one in the Middle East region, launched in 2012. And it's in partnership with one of the biggest ICT companies, Microsoft. And it's helping Arab young people access the job market, not only access the job market and put their resumes, but learning certain skill set, career readiness, on-the-job readiness, interview skill set, and e-learning. I think that's another huge space, is e-learning is gonna transform the way education is gonna be in the future. But e-learning and also career guidance. And I'm very happy to be next to one of our great partners here in Jordan, CAFD, with Bashir, where we've been working closely on the career guidance element. But so that's another thing. And the other thing I want to mention is also learning by doing. I think it is really important for the formal education sector to invest in learning by doing methodologies. And some of these programs include internship programs. I think we need to reinforce these internship programs, have people go out there, learn by doing. So these are just some of the two things. And Silatech is also right now investing in developing an internship toolkit, and it's all in Arabic. And it's for the supply and demand. So it's working with the universities and the education academia on these internship toolkits, and also working with the private sector on, okay, you have an intern, don't have them go get you coffee and tea. Really utilize them, have them learn and benefit from them. Their research skills, they're hungry. How do you utilize them in your company?
Great.
So this is some of the stuff we're doing.
Hold that thought on the career guidance side. I'll ask Dr. Bashir to highlight more on that area. But I want to go to Samia on why are we discovering this now? I mean, a few years back, we started talking about actually skills gap and a problem in communication. Why are we discovering this now? It's like, okay, we've been living for 2,000 years doing well, and then we said, well, no, we have a problem in skills gap. What's happening?
That's a very good question. And of course, a lot of it has to do with the world today, right? We're a lot of people. We need to be more and more specialized. Technology is a big part of our life now. I think the gentleman from McKinsey yesterday talked about 1.6 trillion opportunity a year. If you look at the global GDP, global output, it's around 80 trillion a year. If I look at Jordan, we heard the numbers yesterday, 12.8 of Jordan's GDP is in ICT. Okay, it's a very good number, by the way. It can be higher, but it's pretty good compared to other countries, especially if I benchmark it to the Middle East countries. But 12.8 of 80 trillion, that's a lot of money. And there's a lot of unrealized opportunities. And this is where, again, the public sector can do a lot. Maybe the public sector is already doing a lot, but doing things differently. And I want to talk about two things. We talked already about reform of curriculum. I want to talk about investment in broadband. Investment in broadband is key. And a lot of times the private sector is not going to go to the very far area, the little daya where it makes no money, but the little daya needs to be connected. Just for knowledge, just to have access to knowledge. Because maybe there is no school in that little daya. And e-learning will make a big difference and will allow these people to stay in their little village that they love instead of all converging to Amman or to Beirut, etc., etc. So broadband infrastructure, very important. Government need to think deeply about how to invest in it, just not as an infrastructure, but as a vehicle for a knowledge society. And I know Jordan and a lot of the countries in the MENA region are really anxious to become information society, knowledge societies, etc. So that's the first thing that I want to talk about. The second thing is opportunities that exist but are not taken care of already. For instance, digital content. So a lot of private sector and entrepreneurs were here in the last 2 days, and I was really amazed by the amount of innovation and creativity. But that amount is still, I am sorry to say that, missing in a lot of the public sector worldwide. Innovation seems to be very much concentrated around private sector. So how can governments create jobs? And look at infrastructure projects. You create roads, you're doing solar electricity, you're building solar cells, you're building digital content, the digital highway. And it could be digitizing records from the administration, digitizing Arabic content, making e-library, even, and why only think in Jordan, being a big hub for the global ICT job market. You have now companies that are relying on a concept called microwork that are based in, of course, Silicon Valley, California, but also in France, even in Kenya. And they employ, through a microwork platform, workers everywhere around the world. And these guys make, on average, $10 to $11 an hour, where in their own country they would make maybe less the equivalent of $0.50. So all I'm saying is, again, think of expanding the box, broaden infrastructure, a key for knowledge and globalization and finding jobs. Fairouz's example, how people can find jobs through the internet, through that marketplace, it's an excellent example. We need to see more of that.
So what we're saying, the requirements are changing. The
Yes,
sectors
absolutely.
are changing.
Absolutely,
The job description is changing that we're hiring people on.
absolutely.
So maybe Dr. Bashir can actually tell us more about, it seems to be we're back into career guidance. It seems to be that's an interesting one. Tell us more.
Yeah, actually, career guide is one of the, let's say, short-term solutions that could help alleviate the problem of mismatch, actually. So what we are doing now at King Abdullah II Fund for Development is creating a national employability and entrepreneurship portal in partnership with the Ministry of Labor, Ministry of ICT, the World Bank, our friends in Selatek as well, and other private sector partners. This employability portal, we believe it will be kind of platform that will bring different players working in the employability field towards one platform. For example, in areas like job matching, online training, it will have courses based on the new concept of massive open online courses, MOOCs. And also it will offer volunteering opportunities for the youth, because we believe that there is a strong link between volunteering to build the skills that are needed by the job market, by employers, such as the soft skills that Fairouz mentioned, the teamwork, problem solving, etc. Also, through this portal, we will create what's called lifelong career guidance account. We will start with the university students and job seekers after university, and later on it will be rolled out across Jordanian schools. And this platform will also be supported by a call center to support the youth and provide them with career advice and advice on starting their businesses if they want to become self-employed. Also, we're working on revamping the career guidance offices in the 25 universities. We believe these career guidance offices are the bridge between the university and the workplace. And we will be investing heavily in these career guidance offices. And also we are also in advanced talks with the donor community to support career guidance services in universities. Also, we are in talks with the government to enshrine career guidance services in the accreditation requirements and quality assurance standards of universities, so that the universities will not be accredited without providing career guidance services or bridges to students.
Very interesting. You've touched upon a very important item, which is the accreditation side. How do you see accreditation going? I mean, it seems to be that we've been, the accreditation side, we're accrediting based on content, and while we're saying career guidance is an item that we need, how is that related to accreditation? I mean, we're accrediting content and we're not accrediting if that university or curricula is in line with the requirements of the sector. So what's
excellent.
Seems there is an issue there.
Excellent question. Because we are still in the beginning, we are focusing on putting what we call the legal basis of career guidance services. So that is the first step. And in working with this, we are focusing, to be honest, on the inputs. Like universities need to provide minimum space, minimum number of staff, which is proportionate to the number of students, and a minimum spending, actually, per student per year. In the US, the average spending per student annually is around $59. Here we are starting with $3. CAPD will be chipping $1.50 annually, and the university will be chipping the second half, $1.50. It's early. It is it's the first step on the right direction. Let's say there is a lot to be done, and I think the fruits of this work will be reaped after maybe 5 to 10 years, not now.
I want to go to Baha, to be honest, because Baha, I think what you're doing is totally in the accreditation side. So
yes, actually, we do, or we will be doing actually. The ICT sector skills organization will be the first of its kind in Jordan, because it's dedicated for the ICT sector in particular, and it will be its mandate will be to structure and to provide guidance for the capacity building in general for the ICT sector workforce and human capital in Jordan. The approach it will be adopting is to develop and maintain qualifications frameworks, occupational standards, and employability frameworks for the ICT sector in Jordan, and then to have both sides, the supply and demand, compile and work with to those sectors basically, in order to have a reference for companies while they can recruit and they can find a good pool of candidates, and the supply side, they can go up to these standards and they can build their capacities in several areas actually. The soft skills, as my colleagues mentioned, are very essential and very important. Though the sector skills organization will have 4 pillars basically. The technical side, which is important as well, as I said, because sometimes even the technical side of the academic supply is not up to the expectations and needs of the sector, and this is because of in ICT sector in particular, because it's a very dynamic and evolving sector. While again, as my colleagues said, that the educational and curriculum reform are a bit slow and and maybe stubborn in many cases in Jordan. So basically, the technical side is one of the pillars, in addition to soft skills and English, basically, because English language is one of the barriers against filling the gap and achieving the matching between supply and demand. Actually, in 2012, 75% of jobs advertised in Jordan were requiring fluent English from candidates, while in that year a study showed that only 12% of job seekers have a fluent English level, basically. So this is a very important element, and because It's part of their mandate at their job, so basically it's very essential element for them. And finally, the last one is the job-related skills, because we have so many good technical candidates, but they lack the business skills that they complete the picture for them, and they make them more employable and more able to compete in the job market. So basically, this is in general what the SSO will be doing. It will be launched very soon. Actually, we have received a generous grant from USAID through their Jordan Competitiveness Project. So it will be launched very soon, and you will be hearing about the activities and programs in the near future.
Sounds like what everyone is trying to do, or what all of us are trying to do, is trying to shift from a supply-driven human resources mass numbers into demand-driven, okay, categorized, structured in a way that meets that demand requirements. And that sounds what it's happening. So somehow we're trying to structure the supply and demand sides of the equation. Why I believe there are accreditation standards and there are accreditation methodologies of higher education and education. Is there a lack? So are we trying to fix those, or are we trying to augment them? If we're trying to actually change the requirements into that, Fayrouz, would you shed some light?
Maybe Bashir, you can talk more.
Accreditation, Bashir.
So I'm gonna defer to you.
Excellent. Me too, I'm not the right person, however, to talk about it, but the point of accreditation and quality assurance standards, mainly they are related to let's say, the content of, as you mentioned, of the academic programs provided by universities. There should be kind of quality standards that should be met by these academic programs. At the same time, we are more concerned with the services or programs provided, non-curricular actually, extra non-curricular programs provided by universities. So what we did, we researched the quality assurance standards in the UK and in Scotland, which is independent, in England and Scotland, and also and compared it in Jordan. In addition to the academic programs requirements, there is a need to provide the students with extracurricular activities or programs that will help them to build the skills, soft skills that are needed next to the cognitive and technical skills needed for success in the job market.
Oh wait, so it's not only curricula.
It's not, exactly, it's not. And yeah, there are a couple of student services that should be provided by universities. For example, the alumni office. Part of the accreditation requirements of universities to have alumni offices, which will help to create a feedback loop to the university. We know the role of alumni offices and networks in improving the employability of the current students. I think this is something also we are working on developing with the university. We're still at the phase of exploring this opportunity, because we can see that there is a link between career guidance services that will benefit students and alumni offices that will benefit alumni. So to create this kind of network for each university for improving employability.
Samia, you've seen it in different countries. Where do you see this? Is this a particular problem in the MENA region, or what's your take on it?
It is a global problem. The linkage between education, employment, and job is indeed a global problem. We have it in the US, we have it everywhere. I think you're doing a very good job in Jordan. I think perhaps it's a bit slow, which is expected. Perhaps also the communication about it. All these elements and how they link together, maybe that's an area that you could step up a bit. I see a lot of countries be in that hype cycle, touting their education success story. They're not really there, but they brand themselves that way. I'm not saying this is what we should do, but they communicate, sometimes over-communicate about their effort. I heard so many good stories about entrepreneurs in the last 2 days, participation of young girls in the ICT industry. This is honestly, you have 60% here. We have less than 15% in the US. This is a very good achievement. Wow. These young men and women, if they're not successful in creating their companies, would be perhaps very good employees if this is the path they choose to have with the big top 500 ICT companies. I just want to make a point on how can Jordan could perhaps leapfrog a bit faster. Please. And we've heard a lot about the accreditation, the certification. So really reusing programs and processes that have worked elsewhere, perhaps spending some time adapting them, translating if needed. The issue of the English language, obviously. And again, pursue new opportunities. You are probably at the forefront of a lot of what's happening now in the MENA Middle East and ahead of many. New opportunities, you've talked about smart cities earlier. There was a lot of talk on open data, open standard, an ecosystem for developers to use data to create new services and companies to solve things as mundane as traffic problem or road safety problem, and I'm just using a few examples. So I think you are well positioned to keep going, don't stop, and communicate more about it.
Could you elaborate? I wanted to ask you to elaborate actually on that side, if you...
Actually, back to your accreditation question, it's as I said, the SSO will be developing the frameworks for the ICT sector in Jordan with a participatory approach with the private sector. So basically, within its mandate will be the accreditation for training providers and for universities for certain programs, and for the student side for providing certification. So basically, the qualifications framework will be the reference that we will provide accreditation for training providers and capacity building providers in general, if I may say, for compiling and providing training programs that is in line with those frameworks. And from the other side, provide certifications for students or the human capital in general who passes certain assessments and tests that is again in line with those frameworks.
Very interesting. Fayrouz, we're witnessing this in the higher education area, but what you said earlier is that it's a whole map. So are we really seeing the result at the end, or we're witnessing a collective issue at the different stages? And we're only, when we talk about career guidance and accreditation, we're trying somehow to fix one piece.
Right.
While the other pieces still need to be worked on.
Yeah.
Could you shed some light? How can that be worked out? How can that be done?
So, you know, the organization I work with really focuses on the 18, so the ones after college and entering the new job market. But I think, like you were saying, and the way I believe also as a parent, I think it's the whole value chain. It starts from elementary, and as what Samuel was saying also, it's the whole thing, looking at it. But I want to shed on experience I had with in my past career when I worked with CARE, one of the largest development organization, and it did a lot of focus on girls' leadership in primary education, and it was doing it through extracurricular activities like sports, and it was working in the remotest areas in Egypt and Pakistan, and you know, middle school as well. And they were doing these sport activities, and you would think it's just a tournament or something, but the skills that these girls were being taught were teamwork, problem solving, proactive thinking, and confidence building. And I remember I asked the girl, I said, what was the impact of this program? She said, I have a voice, and I'm gonna make something out of myself. So she was gonna go be there, and I think the biggest thing we have is lack of confidence. And I think what's so great about, you know, connecting that, but also with career guidance, is mind shift of these young people start with self-knowledge and self-advocacy. And when you have that, and you put that, and you plant that at a girl at a young age or a young boy, you see a total change. And I think the entrepreneurship program we're doing here and high school and middle school, and I think it's so important to build strategic partnerships. I think it's going to be a collective approach from private sector, government, NGOs on the ground, civil society. And I think it's great. You see some organizations like Injaz bringing these, private sector leaders coming, talking to these young boys and girls, developing those entrepreneurship skills. So I think it's a holistic approach. And I think for large-scale development programs that I used to see firsthand, as good intentions as they are when they're spending millions in remote countries, I think digging holes for young people, giving them jobs to dig a hole is not going to do it. I think you need to have programs that looks at encompassing youth idealism and youth who want to make a change and a difference in this world and feel self-empowered and meeting their fullest potential. So I think we need to look at all these aspects.
Maybe I can jump to Baha. Baha, we know that, for example, in 2013, the number of graduates from ICT-related majors from universities was 5,700 graduates. About 50% of them were in areas not required, and the other 50% maybe were not ready due to the reasons that we said. So I see the problem. This is a real number that demonstrates actually both problems. 5,700 graduated, 50% of them were in areas not required. That's career guidance, okay? Wasn't there. That's a demonstration of it. The other 50% were basically not ready. Where do you see the SSO trying to bridge that number or bring that into a better situation? What's your forecast?
Okay. Actually, as my colleague Ferouz said, in order to solve the solution, in general, we need to have a holistic approach and maybe a strategic plan on a national level that, as I said, starts from the schools, universities, and ends up with career orientation and capacity building for candidates. But for the SSO in particular, of course, we can't claim that we're going to cover the whole chain of the issue. But though we will be working within our mandates on the core of our work, which is the capacity building and providing the frameworks, accreditation, and certification in order to help in the match. In addition to working with other partners and other stakeholders, even universities, other NGOs related to youth development, all the efforts in this regard, even if we're not tackling the whole chain, but we're part of that chain. And we have to help each other actually in order to provide a comprehensive, to reach the holistic solution that we're aiming to and looking forward to have. We have to have our own role achieved completely and successfully. And in our case, we're talking about the ICT sector in particular. So basically, even the career counseling will be part of our mandate, and of course, there will be cooperation with other entities and continuing and collaborating with King Abdullah Fund and other institutions to end up with providing a good effort and a good portion of what's needed to be done in that direction. We'll be working with youth, we'll be working with academic institutions, we'll be working with the private sector, closely with the private sector companies, because down the road they are the direct beneficiaries and they are major players of the economic aspect that we're trying to provide our help in. So basically, as far as we're concerned, we hope that we can see solutions and progress in the educational reform. But from our perspective, we're talking about the economic or maybe socio-economic impacts of those issues. So this is the arena where we will be playing basically and providing our services. So hopefully by the time, by a couple of years or so, we can have some significant impacts of this approach, and hopefully it will be replicated to other sectors in the future.
Great, great. I'd like to actually bring this panel to a conclusion. What's interesting to me, at least, and I hope to the audience, that everyone is trying to do a piece. And I'm hoping that these pieces would come together and create the impact that we're all looking for in creating better quality jobs for our graduates. What's interesting also about it, in the past, we used to say we have a problem. Now we have solutions. So we're bringing this into a great conclusion, I hope. And I would like to thank the panel, thank the audience, and we're going to have to finish because we're expecting a great attendee and visitor, and we're expecting a great session. We're speaking of youth. The youth is here, basically. So this is the interesting point. Thank you very much, my colleagues, and hope to see you in the next session. Thank you.